Hi there, this is Ezra Reimer, and I'm doing a little tutorial here in Tinkercad. I want to talk about how to do a little bit more complex shapes, or how to kind of visualize the shape you want to get to. Now, when you're doing something that's a little bit less boxy, a little bit more complex, often you want a shape and it's not right here in the basic shapes. Now, there are a whole series of other shapes in the shape generator dropdown under all. And certainly, I would encourage you to explore those shapes there, because there are a lot of really good ones. But I want to talk a little bit about making complex shapes out of simple shapes in just a couple of steps. And often what needs to be done is you need to be thinking about how do I start? What kind of cuts do I need to make? And then how do I assemble the final shape? So I'm going to talk about, for instance, if you wanted to do the bed of a truck, right? So you're modeling a truck and you want to build the truck bed. You know, I almost always work from some sort of reference, but in this case, I'm not going to be pulling my references up on the screen. But I do want you to take a look at this. So I've dropped in a box, and now the easiest, simplest way to go about doing this, kind of where you'd go first, is like if this is the bed of the truck, you know, it's kind of looks like this, and you might decide that you want to punch out a a shape like this, kind of for the middle, right? To create, we're just going to move it up a little bit using the little cone tool there, right? And if we group these two, we kind of create a box shape, or basically a truck box shape here. But that might not actually be the best way to go about doing this, and I like to give myself a little bit more freedom. So one of the things you want to think about when designing anything that you want to look a little bit more realistic is things like radius. So when you select your box, boxes have radius to them, and so if you click on the radius here, you can actually, and we keep the steps high to keep that smooth edge, we actually can add just a little bit of a smooth edge to this. Now, that's a good start, but it might not be the exact sort of radius you want. So let's actually go down to, let's make this thing a square again. So let's make it 30 pixels, or 30 millimeters by 30. Not height. There's 30. Let's see if it actually did that, or it just added 30. Just added 30. We'll type it in here. So 30 by 30. Okay. So we've got a cube, kind of 30 by 30 here. And I like those corners. So we've got a radius of 1.2. Let's make the radius 2 millimeters, just so we have a nice even number here. So a couple things. I like these corners, and I like that curve along the top. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to slice this apart into sort of component parts. So I'm going to create a couple copies of it just by holding down the Alt key and dragging, because I will need a couple copies of it to get all the parts I want. So I'm going to grab the whole box. I'm going to make this thing, oops, we're going to drag it up so it's big enough to cut through. And I'm going to make this box kind of like this. So basically what I'm doing is I'm taking a look at this corner radius here and going, okay, that kind of looks like the top edge of a truck bed, right? I like that shape. Seems pretty decent. And let's do an align here. So let's pop this right onto that line right there. So I can, so it's 1 millimeter, 2, 3. You can go with a 3 millimeter slice here. So that's what I'm going to start with. Notice I'm going to cut apart this whole thing. I'm only leaving the edge here. So I'm going to combine these two. So now I have kind of this sliced off like it's a loaf of bread edge here. Now, this shape can be really useful for a number of different options, but it actually needs to be sliced down into smaller components just for the sake of you don't want it to to basically stretch, right? You've got these corners here, and if you start resizing this shape, it is going to skew and stretch. So we are going to actually chop this thing down even further. We're going to duplicate it once, so we still have this shape and we can still work with it. I'm going to grab another box here, align it there, and we're going to cut it apart in the same way. So I'm going to click 1, 2, 3, and make sure it's tall enough, right? Now we've got basically a 3. Let's make sure this one is actually on. There we go. That looks better. So I'm just using these 10 by 10 squares to kind of align this whole thing. Oops. And I'm going to drag it apart there. Okay. I'm going to also create a duplicate here, but I'm going to basically... There we go. So this one right here, we've got basically a 3 by 3 rounded shape. So I'm going to combine these two right here like this. Combine those two to cut this thing down. Now we've got a very interesting shape here. We've got a corner bevel that can be used anytime you need to change directions on this thing. And then I'm also going to take this one right here. We're going to combine this one and these two. I'm basically cutting off the corners, and I'm left with basically a flat beveled panel section. Notice that these align perfectly, right? So we have this really nice, beautiful chunk that we can now use to build shapes out of. So I can take this one, because it doesn't have any corner beveling, as long as I am extruding it only in this direction. And this is the important thing. You can only extrude this one in this direction because this is the direction in which it is not going to distort. If you start pulling it like this, right, you're going to get some distortion along the bevel there. So you do have to kind of take that in mind when you're modeling a complex shape like this, is what is its final total height going to be. I might also find that I want to, I'm going to put this all the way down to 0. Okay, and I'm going to take it up 1, 2, 3, because that's kind of the length of our bevel here. And I'm going to duplicate this once. So I'm going to actually cut off the bottom of this this panel right there, and I'm also going to cut off the bottom of this panel right here as well. I don't need a shape that's this big. It starts to get kind of ugly in the loading stage here if you got too much going on. Okay, so combine it with this. So now I have basically, as long as this is the height you're going to maintain for your object, right? I can take this right here and delete these and click on this and hit F, right? I can create a duplicate of that. I can rotate it and I can align it here. Oh, now I've got a little bit of a truck bed sort of style shape taking place. I can take this one, I can duplicate it. I can rotate it, or I could just simply hit mirror, right? I can mirror it along that axis and pop it in there. Oh, look at that. Perfect. I've got this shape right here. I'm going to mirror it along this axis. And now I'm